Hello, everybody. Sorry about all the technical difficulties. Okay, we are on live. We are not getting any audio or video from my guest. Okay, so Marion Laird says, got it. All right. So we're doing this as a phone interview because we've had so many tech meltdowns today. I can't even begin to tell you. The road rally is over. The physical road rally is over. It went great. And I am so excited because for this first road rally sequel, can you ask her to be quiet out in the hallway, please, right now? Anyway, I have reconnected with an old friend of mine named Michael Ungar that I am thrilled to have on board today. He's the co-owner and senior engineer, one of the founding members of Sandblast Productions in New York. He's an award-winning sound designer and audio post-mixer who, as a jazz trumpeter, multi-instrumentalist, and composer, has received acclaim throughout his career for his unique blend of technical skills and innate musicality. Wow, you've got innate musicality. That's impressive.
Look at that. Yeah. I knew him.
Mike has mixed and sound designed TV shows, promos, commercials, documentaries, animated specials, upfronts, indie films, and award shows, and marketing tapes, and still has time to play tennis every now and then, which I doubt. But that is just because he gets up really early. I want to hear about that. His mixing and music have been heard on a wide variety of projects and networks, from cartoons like the original Thundercats, Ho! To Showtime's Emmy-nominated documentary, A Game of Honor, from the NFL's documentary on the making of 2021 NFL Man of the Tier. It says Man of the Tier Award. Should say Man of the Year Award, I'm sure.
It's true. Wonderful.
To the Degree, castor oil, or To Degree, deodorant, General Foods, castor oil, and Axe spots for Mindshare World Entertainment that aired during the Super Bowl. His mixing for film work includes multi-award-winning films like Man Made, as well as Spinnaker, and the documentary on legendary jazz bassist Buster Williams, From Bass to Infinity. Over the years, Mike created sound design and mixed the launch campaigns for network launches and reboots for the History Channel, TV Land, Nick at Night, Noggin, Sci-Fi, USA, Sprout, PBS Kids, Logo, Paramount Network, as well as program launches like Peacock's hit series, Bel Air, Vampire Academy, and Wolf Like Me, Paramount Network's Ink Master, Ink Angels, Yellowstone and Bar Rescue, and Nickelodeon's Peter Rabbit, Bubble Guppies, which is a big favorite with my grandkids. Paw Patrol, my grandkids love that one, and dozens of other projects for Sesame Workshop, including Sesame and Audible's recent collection of Foley and Friends. Michael wrote the theme for Fred on Your Head Show, Girls vs. Boys, PBS Kids, NBC's Get Up and Move, Stickly specials, and has written and produced for many Sesame Workshop DVDs, including their most popular DVD of all time, Elmo's Potty Time. I still watch that.
Me too. Got to remember how to do it.
And he also wrote and produced the Magilla the Gorilla rap. Still waiting for the royalty check to come in after 60,000 plays on Boomerang and the Cartoon Network and over 3 million hits on YouTube. And you still haven't gotten paid. That's sad.
It is sad.
Anyway, it is great to connect with you. I'm so sorry the audience can't see you because I was joking around when we did have him on video that as old as the two of us are, that we both still have a pretty full head of hair, which is an accomplishment from what other people our age tell me. Anyway, Michael, I can't tell you how delighted. I mean, it's been 25, 30 years since we've spoken, and it feels like it was last week.
Too long, but absolutely, sir. It was wonderful to connect with you. I mean, our journey together started back in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, at my first studio with a Scully 284-8 track, and I believe you met my brother as an entertainment attorney when you were studio manager at Howard Schwartz, and that's how we connected.
Yeah, I was actually commuting from Scotch Plains, New Jersey into Manhattan every day, and there was this guy that I became friends with on the bus named Paul. Turns out he was a music attorney, and one day I was telling him that I'd brought in a new client called Rankin Bass, and they were they were the people that made the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer claymation thing. That was a huge worldwide hit. I mean, it made them millions upon millions of dollars. And then they came up with an idea for a show called Thundercats. And myself and Howie Schwartz, my boss, landed that client, and they needed, I think, 2 little audio post rooms and weekly record sessions for the full cast. And so I needed a new engineer, and I asked my bus buddy, the music attorney, Paul, hey, didn't you mention your brother's an engineer? He's got a home studio. It was in your parents' house, right?
The first one was, yeah.
Yeah, and I had no idea other than his brother, the attorney brother seemed to have his act together, and he spoke very highly of his younger brother. And I got to know Mike, and I said, hey, you want to interview for this job? And he got it, and that was the launch of a whole other aspect of his career. And the reason I asked you on the show today was that so many taxi members are earning income from their music placements that at this point the number is literally uncountable. The level of success ranges from people that get maybe a few placements a year to people who are making 6-figure incomes doing it. And something that nearly all of them seem interested in is creating a full-time professional career, creating music for media, and maybe even incorporating sound design and audio post-production mixing for TV shows and films and video games as well. So I reached into my little black book, and I stumbled on my friend Mike Ungar and called him up, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and said, hey, you want to do this? He said, sure. And it was just, for me, the exciting part of this is not that we're doing a Taxi Road Rally sequel, but that I'm getting to hang out with you because it's been far too long. So yeah, when I met you, that was before Alesis ADATs were a thing, before Pro Tools was a thing, and like you said, you had a Scully 8-track down in the basement. What kind of console did you have?
So it was a Sound Workshop, and then we, just as I met you, I graduated to an Ampex MM 1000, 2-inch 16-track, which sounded great. Sold it to recently before I moved down out of New Jersey, to a guy named Steve Marinaccio, who has created this incredible analog studio out in Chatham, New Jersey, Chatham Township, where he has all this vintage gear, so Neves and Ampex 24s, and just so I'm glad it found a home. But now everything we do, of course, is pretty much all in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk to you about how that has all changed everything. So yeah, when you started working on Thundercats, my recollection is that it was a weird kind of audio post, because it's the only animated show I can remember where they actually cut the voice. They recorded the cast as an ensemble around several microphones, usually like 5 or 6 people live in the room. Then those tapes would go down to your room. You would edit that stuff with the show's exec producer, and then you would lay in music cues from a custom-built production music library that they had. Then you would send that stuff off to Japan, and they would animate to the audio. Am I correct?
Correct. And very unusual, very true. And what it did was sort of force Pacific Animation to sort of pay attention to the timings as we saw them. But of course, in the very beginning, you would have our producer, Tony Giovanelli, or Steve Bruskin, would have a stopwatch and a matchbook or whatever, and go, and Snarf jumped out of the thunder tank. And he says, stop. And then he said, put in 7 seconds, And so you undo your leader tape, right?
Yeah.
And put it on in. And so we really got to control the horizontal and the vertical. The dialogue tapes would go out. You'd make mags of them, as you recall, Michael.
Yes, and for everybody's edification, a mag is a piece of 35 millimeter film with sprocket holes in the side with a magnetic stripe that looks like audio tape built into that 35 millimeter film,
to be synced later up with film itself, right? When we would actually go and mix them at the mix place. And those would go on out as a dialogue edit. The show would come back, and during that time period, we would be roughing in music. So I was doing dialogue editing, music supervision, once I sort of got my feet wet after a year. And, at some point in time, I don't know if anybody is old enough to remember this, or maybe in reruns, Thundercats for about 5 years was playing somewhere in the world every minute of the day. And if I may sort of bring that up as to what that means financially, or it did at the time, shall I discuss that, Michael?
Yeah.
So Arthur Rankin was in charge of the video of the film, the animation process. Jules Bass was in charge of the concept as well as audio. He wrote the lyrics to the Thundercats, which was Thunder, 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 Thundercats. That was the lyrics. And whenever we needed a bumper, he would say, please use a vocal so he could get his piece. Bernie Hoffer wrote the music, very well-known TV studio composer, as well as a serious classical composer. Bernie, I think, wrote 4 hours of library music for something around $10,000 flat fee, but got a piece of the publishing as well as his writer's share of the music. And Arthur Rankin owned the publishing. This was before Lorimar and larger corporations got hip to buyouts and gave away publishing because they didn't want to deal with it. And if you told Arthur, if you put a gun to his head and said, sing the theme to the Thundercats, that wouldn't work out. But I was a good friend of his accountant, and I was like, so what's that worth, Chuck? You know, getting played every minute of the day for, you know, every quarter. And he said, you know, Arthur gets somewhere around $165,000 a quarter. And that's when I decided that my job should be walking down to the mailbox and picking up a check and going, I wonder what that's for. And I've been chasing that carrot, Michael, ever since, really.
As do many of our members, you know.
Exactly. I brought it up.
We actually do have a handful of members that can honestly say their music is heard somewhere in the world, at least every hour of the day. Maybe not every minute of the day, but definitely every hour of the day. And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to interview you, because you've done every aspect. You know, you've cut shows together like that. You've recorded just simple voiceovers, the 1/4-inch tape. You've mixed a lot of stuff. You've worked on a lot of big TV shows and TV commercials. So I had a question. Oh, transitioning from a music engineer. I remember when I left doing records and moved to New York and started doing audio post, I thought, how hard can this be? Most of the time you're using like 3 faders. And not that many tracks. And, you know, back in my rock and roll days, you could spend a half a day getting a drum sound and moving plywood around the room when you're setting up a stack of Marshalls to get more reflections, all that stuff. And I was shocked when I moved to New York and found out the speed at which audio post-production moved and the client expectations. Maybe it's just New York, but I don't think so. Did you also feel that when I dragged you out of your basement studio into NYC?
Well, it was decidedly a different experience. I happened to be able to transition into it because the crew that I was working with had really had this formula down. So Thundercats was already a year in production, so it was a learning experience. Larry Frank was an amazing engineer and a great teacher of how to jump into it, but the creative solving, the creative process, right, and the problem solving, whether it was music, composition, or whether you're dealing with a client directly, or you're figuring out the best way to transition from one scene to another, it's really about creative solving, problem solving. And I do remember you giving me a bunch of tapes when I was like, well, what is this? What are you talking about? Right. And he said, you watch TV, you watch cartoons, you get it. So I think he gave me some dialogue and some music and went home and put something together and played it for you, and you're like, yep, that's how that goes. And so it really is still about using your ears and being a creative problem solver. So the transition wasn't, it was different because you're not hanging out. There's a lot to get done. And that has increased exponentially ever since digital has become the norm. Not that projects get finished any faster. I don't know if your members experience the same sort of thing, but because of the nature of nonlinear, you are asked to revise things more and more and more than I ever used to when I was in analog land. Because with analog land, it took time, it took money, and at some point in time, people would sign off on it and go, it's not worth taking steps backwards.
Right.
And you remember, of course, Roy Latham, one of the fastest, engineers on the planet, could just, as he mentioned to me, revisions can be annoying, but they did build my porch. So,
and the funny thing is about Roy Latham, we could talk about him behind his back, because we'll only have great things to say about him. He's an inspiration to all of us who've ever touched a fader doing audio post. Roy was so laid back, yet so fast, and made it look so effortless. And he was one of the few. He taught me the trick of, if you want people to love you more and come back and request you more often, just turn around and stare them down and say, we had it on take 3. And he's right. He taught me the whole concept of commanding the room. I could have, the vice president of some big corporation, let's say McDonald's, just to give an example, in the room, the VP of advertising from McDonald's, the VP of the ad agency, the creative director of the ad agency, the guy who wrote the spot, all these power hitters in the back of the room, of course, eating lunch from the Palm or some expensive restaurant while they were doing it. But they would debate every little point like they might in a conference room, just jacking, wasting time and not getting any product. And Ray would turn around and look at Roy would turn around and look at him and said, you had it on take 3. And they're already up to like take number 78, just pissing their time away. So I love Roy Latham. I still talk to him about every 5 years.
An amazing guy with just the right mentality. It was a pleasure learning from him, and sharing those experiences, Michael, learning from you, everybody sort of learning together is. I do bemoan that it's great to have a home rig. I'm set up in Maryland now, and I share my drives with all the rest of my crew in New York, in upstate New York, in Queens, in Jersey. We all have that sort of connectivity, and we do have production meetings on Zoom, and we see each other. But I do miss not only the fun of and the creative interplay that occurs, but also the ability, the opportunity to learn from each other as someone's working, and you go, hey, have you found a way around this issue, or how did you deal with something? That is tougher now, but certainly since COVID and since the implementation of remote work. Even though you can do a lot of, we just did something for Radio City Spectacular. We wrote. They're looking for original music, which we also do. That's not our main gig, but we do have a music director. And when we were tasked to do this, so it was great. We brought in the horn section, or friends of ours who used to be in Tower of Power touring, and it was great to have everybody. And the bone player was in his studio, the trumpet player was in his studio, sax player was in their studio. Everybody laid things down. The sync was funky, but not to them. When I got it, I could line everything up, and there we had it. We had a 3-part horn section, even though we were 600 miles apart. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, it's funny that you brought up the whole thing of working under one roof and the interaction, because I had a question. I'm going to read it to you. You're going to laugh. You hit the nail right on the head. You and I had the benefit of working in a top-level facility where we had other engineers like Roy Latham and Richie Becker to learn from, both on a technical level as well as how to deal with clients and make them happy. Most of the people watching this show work out of home studios, so they don't have that luxury of learning from others who are a rung or two above them on the ladder. Do you have any ideas how they might learn. Do you have any ideas for how they might learn what you did while being isolated in a home studio? So yeah, that's my question. Is I feel like all these people, yes, on one hand, you can do so much more in the digital domain with Logic or Pro Tools or whatever. Unimaginable to us back in the day because we worked on 2-inch tape and quarter-inch tape. We had 24 tracks. One of the tracks had time code on, so we really had 23 tracks. We had to use synchronization devices to lock us to video. You had a little run-up time for the two devices to sync up to each other. It was a whole different world. But we did have that benefit of, like, at the end of the day, hanging out saying, wow, I encountered this problem today in a session. So we all got to learn from each other. How do these folks who are isolated now, I mean, they can watch YouTube videos, they can hang out on forums like Gear, whatever it's called. But I feel like so much of the information out there, you don't know if you're listening to somebody who worked at the level that you are, or that I did, or our friends like, Richie or Ray did, or Roy. I mean, how do they know if they're learning the right stuff, or how do they learn anything at all?
It's a really great point, Michael. I don't have phenomenal answers. My experience has almost always been partnering, right? So I've never really looked to let me just go and do my own thing. I mean, that's how I started out, but I was in a band, and there's something magically creative about that, whether everybody gets along or not, or the drummer shows up at 4 a.m. when not supposed to. But always look to find that in truth the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I'm in an unusual situation that my partners and the group of people that I work with, I've been with Ralph and Lauren for 30 years.
Wow.
We didn't leave. We all left Schwartz together to go do Broadway video and Broadway sound together. And then we ended up at Creative Group for a little while. And we actually never wanted to own a facility because they go out of stuff to keep them going, as everybody knows. But when the opportunity presented itself as the last opportunity for us to maintain that type of relationship, we opened up our own place in New York. So partnering with people, not necessarily of like mind, but of I wouldn't even say like mentalities, but because like minds often gets you bland product, right? But
right.
If everybody's always in agreement with each other, it may or not go. But people with open minds, with different takes on how you approach things, but are approaching things without ego. I mean, that's really important if you are collaborating to be able to listen. So there's that. And then to your point, Michael's like, well, who are you listening to?
Yeah.
It's, do you find your group in a forum? Do you find your group in reading articles in Production Expert, which I do still every day, to take a look at the newest software and read reviews and watch other people's commentary. But again, I have a great advantage in that my two partners and I still are daily, work with each other daily. The other engineers that I do work with are all top-notch guys who either trained under us or came from other situations. Guys like Bill Lacey, who was at RCA restoring Tuscanini, and ears that I marvel at, and getting into digital audio restoration early on and starting to understand it, and finding different pathways within this creative community, whether it's audio post, music composition, video for that matter, sound design. That collaboration is important. You can really find yourself isolated. I think it's important to reach out to other people within the field and have those type of discussions and make that sort of an effort.
I'm so glad you said that, because literally last night at 11 p.m. I got home from our Taxi Road Rally, which is a 3-day conference with a couple thousand people that come from literally from all over the world. And it is the most generous community of musicians. There's no, like, typically you go to a music convention, there are a lot of guys with long hair and a lot of tats, and they're like, crotch grabbers hanging out being cool with their leather pants. It's like, man, your music sucks. My band is awesome. None of that at the Taxi Road Rally. And people that come for the first time walk up to me all weekend and say, I've never seen a level of community and generosity within the community. Your most experienced, highest earning members will talk to somebody who just started out 30 days ago. And so I think your point is really well taken. And I've seen it played out in that live situation. And frankly, myself and some of the people I'm watching in the chat room, they see were there yesterday and just got home right now and are watching our show together, would back me up on this. It's like it's a freakishly generous community, but that interaction, the people who come to that convention become our most successful members because exactly what you just said, that if you've got other people who will share what they know with you, rising water floats all boats. And I miss that aspect. I really do. Maybe that's why the Road Rally has become so important to me. Even the chat room that I'm watching right now as I'm talking to you has become its own little community where members meet other members. They end up collaborating on music.
There you go.
Somebody needs a sax player. They know a sax player who hangs out in this chat room all the time. We have a forum, which is old school technology. People go on the forum because they get to know other people and they share, they collaborate, they get deals because of who they meet. Anyway, could not agree with you more. And this is so awesome talking to you because this is why we became friends, is because I think we see the world in a similar light and value many of the same things. So it's really nice talking to you. I have a question about the client side of things. One of the things that you and I both learned in our years at Howie Schwartz, I'm sure that you continued to learn it as you went to Broadway video, the Broadway sound, and went through all these iterations of your career, is dealing with client personalities, because ultimately they are who you have to make happy, and you want them to come back. I equate what you do and what I used to do like haircutters. You'll stick with the same haircutter for decades if you like the person and they've got the chops, no pun intended. Is my audio clipping? Anyway, how did you learn to make clients happy? And do you have any tips that you can pass along to our members? Because even though they're working mostly in isolation, they still have to make their clients happy. What have you learned?
While we were doing things in person, and that digital or not, right, up until COVID, really, sessions would, could end up, you'd be with your client for long periods of time, especially if you're working on the same, on the same show or same episodes. When I did Stickly, it was basically the same group of people pretty much, 3 days a week. And so you really got to learn about, whether for better or for worse, more about them than just the professional side of things. So you were not just an audio engineer or a composer or whatever you were doing, you were also, part therapist and part, shoulder to cry on, because they have to report to the next person up. And part of the skill set, I think, is being able to anticipate, once you learn their ways, being able to anticipate their needs, and also to think about where this project goes next in terms of levels of approval. So if they have your respect and you have theirs, you get to discuss it. You're not just an operator, right? You are,
right.
Back to the Roy thing, you are an involved member of the creative process. I studied electronic music. I was one of the guys who was involved in the development of the synclavier at the Bregman Electronic Music Studio. I told them they had to put a pitch bend knob on it, even though Sid Alonso and John Appleton really didn't want to. But I said, I'm a pitch bend knob. Stevie Wonder's not going to buy it. And Stevie Wonder came up and said, "Where's the pitch bend knob?" So
I remember that. I had forgotten that you worked with those people. That's so cool.
So always approaching, for me, it was always approaching it with the same mentality. I also studied film and film scoring, sort of that 3-shot sequence, right? What you're doing now has been defined by what you did just before and where you want to go next, and so that you're always thinking, if you will, in 3-shot sequences so that you're going to get to that end product. And so by anticipating that, you become a real go-to guy to the people who you're working with. Even though pre-COVID, my clients pretty much stopped coming to the studio because they're like, "Look, I don't need to sit behind you, look at the back of your head, as nice as that is, and listen to what I know I'm going to spend 5 minutes listening to, either approving or having a few tweaks to, and get that product out the door. I have other things I need to do. You know what you're doing." And so that's really how you get to keep a client, right? Where they don't have to be watching you throughout the entire process. Granted, having somebody in the room constantly when you have I want to tweak it, it's like an optometrist, like remote optometry, not so great. Is it better like this? Is it better like, better to have that sort of choice instantly, that sort of instant feedback. But to know that the guy you're working with, the client knows that the person he's working with is going to deliver what you need. Yeah, you're going to get notes. And one of the problems in our industry, one of the challenges, should I say, in our industry is usually the person that you're working with on that line production is not the person who has final say. I'm sure all of your composers have gone through the moment of just saying, "Can't you just play it for the guy who's going to say yes or no?"
Oh, absolutely. We get that all the time.
Right. And that's a challenge. So part of their job is to be able to anticipate that, and part of your job is to stick to your guns when you know you've done something right, and have faith. At least make the argument before you change it, to go, "This is why I feel the way I feel about this moment in time," whether it's scoring, audio post, whatever you're doing. I think you have the right, as part of the creative process, to express that opinion, and then be open enough to change that, when requested. That's how I've kept a lot of mine, but it also means a lot of change, a lot of late night.
No, everything you said is gold, and I'm so glad that I reconnected with you and that you are, just laying this stuff out for everybody, because sometimes I feel like when I alone am telling people this, that they think that there's an underlying reason, like I'm trying to sell them a taxi membership or something. But, I come from that world that you're still in and talking about, and everything you're saying is 100% as I remember it, and I completely endorse every word, especially the word anticipate. And I've got a short story I'd like to share, even though I'm interviewing you, but I think I may have even told you this story back when we first started working together. Around 1975, probably, I got called to be the assistant engineer on the first Firefall album with You Are the Woman on it. The producer was a guy named Jim Mason. I'd never worked with him before, and frankly, that was the first real full record that I worked on from start to finish, and I got a credit on. And the first day in the session, Jim Mason's sitting next to the engineer at the console. I'm in the back of the room, keeping my mouth shut, looking around at everything, making sure nobody is looking for an ashtray or whatever. And Jim Mason looks over his shoulder at me and he says, "Hey, you." I'm like, "Yeah." You're the assistant engineer, right? I said, yeah. He goes, so your job is to anticipate my every need. So if you see me look over my shoulder to the left or to the right, I either need a grease pencil to mark an edit point, a pencil to write a note, or a razor blade to chop a line. So you need to have all those things on your person at all times. And the next time I look over my shoulder, you need to be standing 6 inches from me with that stuff laying in the palm of your hand. That's the difference between a decent assistant engineer and a great assistant engineer who will get asked to come back and do more sessions with this group of people. You need to learn to anticipate. And I taught that to every assistant that I ever trained, and every one of them went on to be like a gold or platinum level engineer, and they've all got Jim Mason in the anticipation lesson to thank for that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because you've confirmed what I've known for 45 or 50 years. And they should make that a course in college, no matter what line of work that you ultimately want to go into. Anticipation is the key to success.
Couldn't agree more. And I think we're of like mind there, Michael, as well, in that anticipating, again, with creativity, again, creative problem solving. That's really what our entire job is. Now, as a composer, you're still able to do the same thing. If you're putting your mind towards a composition that you're thinking, I've seen various types of music in various scenarios here. I want to create something that is going to be instantly usable. When I'm going and I'm doing music searches, we have a very small stock music library of our own stuff, because 90%, 95%, 99% of what we do is work for hire, right? When, the Rockettes, Radio City doesn't want to bother with cue sheets, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of people that we've dealt with over the years where the fee is high, the royalties don't exist. Which can translate for you, your group, as sync licensing is high, and when it's exclusive, and you take your money up front. But anticipating where your music might be used is pretty important, and how it might be used, and how you can create an overall composition that makes me want to use it. Is it's easy to manipulate edits, it's easy to use the splits, it's easy for me as an audio post engineer to get what I want out of it, because if you're not scoring the picture, the audio post guy or the video editor has to deal with it. So you want to make it as easy as possible. You want to anticipate that process and make it as easy as possible for the next guy who has to touch the ball to make use of your product, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it makes total sense. And it's funny, you used the word usable a few minutes ago. I would say that during the course of 3 8-hour days in the ballroom moderating panels, I must have used the word usable, I don't know, a couple dozen times, because it's one thing if you're making records, you're making art, and it's what comes out of your musical soul. And I understand that. I endorse it. I appreciate it. I feel wonderful about it. I look forward to someday making records again. But in the world of production music or scoring or anything that goes into any form of media, ultimately it's about that utility. Is it something that they can use to amplify a mood in a scene, something to get you further engaged with the actor in the scene? It's all about usability, and then there's the technical aspect of usability as well. Does it have enough edit points in there that it can be chopped up well? As a matter of fact, I did a panel. I've made a new friend recently. He and I have just hit it off incredibly. He's the executive producer of a bunch of true crime shows and other documentaries as well. And he and I were having, he's also a composer and a Taxi member and usually the editor, at least the lead editor on his own shows. And during the course of dinner, he said, here's how I use stems. And as he started talking, I'm like, man, I've been in the industry for like 49 years. I've never heard anybody explain that like you just did. Would you do a panel at the Road Rally and show that? And he did. He literally will create dozens of stems sometimes from pretty rudimentary and simple cues, and ultimately uses them in ways where the end result of his shows is they feel scored, because he'll take just like a little guitar turnaround and maybe loop that and use that as, on an act out or something like that, for emphasis. Yep. He's really thinking ahead. He's anticipating the usability of his music as he's creating it. So I said to him during the panel, you know what? I'm going to get the 200-seat theater. It's kind of like a Hollywood screening room in the hotel where we do the event every year. I'm going to get that room and invite a couple dozen music library friends of mine, owners of music libraries, to come and watch what he does, because it's amazing to me, very few music libraries actually ask for stems. And it makes the music so much more usable, which translates to exactly what you said in the beginning of this conversation, is you want to be Arthur Rankin someday and go to your mailbox for more checks. Well, the more usable your music is and the more ways you can find to make it more usable, the more checks you're going to get.
That's it. Absolutely. And I mean, stems are becoming more common within, the larger libraries, right? APM, Extreme, Discrete, that you can request stems or they have them. One of the amazing things that are, that's occurring now, which is, I guess, machine learning or AI, but, you can upload a pop track to Extreme and say, search, find me something that sounds like this. So and it'll come up with 15 selections. We just did something similar to that. So it's like, I want to be inspired by this type of pop music, or this particular, and it'll spit it back out. But there's nothing like the discerning ear and listening to that and going, but is it is it usable?
Yeah. Man, I wish we lived in the same town.
Want to get out of the basement ever, Michael, anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm either playing gongs in my studio, which is my wife and I own it's her business, is sound therapy, sonic immersions, etc. I have 20 planetary gongs, man, blast you off. I play didgeridoo, still play Peruvian flute. That's when I get to go out and just free my mind for a little bit, groove on the astral plane, and then come back and do my,
back to the basement. I get it. My entire life consists of the taxi office or my house.
Yes. He says, like, don't you want to put a window in? I'm like, no, I've been a studio rat since I've been 20, and that's no light. Thank you. Now that's like a casino. I don't want to know what time.
I can't believe you just said studio rat. I told my wife when I die, that's what I want on my tombstone. Michael Laskow, studio rat. That's it. That's where my heart really is. Oh God, we were talking about
usability and anticipation.
Yeah. All right. Probably time to move on to something else here. So, what do you enjoy most? I mean, you do sound design, you do mixing, you do music creation. Is music still your thing because you started out as a musician?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about what all of us at Sandblast do is everybody's a musician. Everybody started out either in a band or thought they were going to be, or a producer or whatever they were going to do. They're all players. And so they incorporate their musicality, as do I, into pretty much everything I do. When there's a stock music track that's not just quite making it, add a little guitar line or enhance with some drums instead of whooshes and bangs and the same stuff that you hear on every trailer. Maybe you can start to think about it in a more musical way. conversely, same thing for people who are composing. Have gotten much more into sound design now, right? Not just using instrumentation. They're also using sonic elements that would normally not be found in a composition. So think, so think in those terms when you're composing something. You've seen a trailer, you know how it's going to go. You know the big rise at the end, and then this quiet moment, and then whatever the tagline that use everything that you can at your disposal. And because of the libraries that are out there, from Contact Native Instrument, fill in the blank, Easy Drummer, to Spitfire, to keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
There's so many sonic elements available to you. I mean, there's nothing like live horns, guys. There's nothing I can say. I can fake a French horn, and it's all fine. But when you get right down to it, I think the last time I was truly moved by a score, I think it was maybe look, you get excited, you're blown away. All the other things, The Incredibles was incredible. The mix on that, they should have gotten an Oscar for it. Not Ray shouldn't have gotten but The King's Speech, when he's walking down the hallway to do it, and they're playing Beethoven's Seventh, it blows you away.
Yeah.
Why? Freaking Beethoven's Seventh. That's why. I mean, the rest of the score is great. So, attaching that emotionality and finding a way to reach that is, whether or not I'm doing it on a Paw Patrol promo or a sizzle tape. It's like, find a way to make it musical. That's so it hasn't really differentiated for me, but and I do get a chance to write stuff. So Accidents happens to be one of my favorite tunes that I wrote for Elmo's Body Time. The reason why is every time you say the word accident, it's an accidental. And so only my music partner, Lauren, was like, man, that's cool. It's a nice tune. It was sort of a Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, buddy sort of song that, unfortunately, as honored as I was to have Frank Oz sing it, Frank Oz did say to me, I'm not really a singer. So what are you going to do? But there it is. And then sometimes, look, it doesn't, the financial thing isn't the only, it's a very important part of it, but I'll tell you a story that's may or may not relate at all. But I was bummed out one year, it was around Christmas time, and I was like, Almost Party Time sold like 450,000 copies. If that was an album, we would be double platinum. But because DVD, the public performance royalties are different, and 14 different writers with different blah 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 blah, it really didn't really make any money. I'm kind of bummed out, and I was like, I'm going to read a couple of reviews. Let me see. So I got on it, and there was a review of a father saying, Elmo's Potty Time. My daughter went to bed, and she was crying, and she was very upset because she was older, and she just couldn't, it was an unusual thing for her to occur. And as we were changing the sheets, we sang Accidents Happen, and it made everything okay. And I was like, all right, fine. Doink, 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 a couple of little tears forming, and going, all right, it's not all about the money.
Right. I want to go back. You mentioned APM and AI. That was the point I wanted to make. My keynote this year was actually Adam Taylor, the CEO of APM, who also happens to be the chairman of the board of the Production Music Association. And he and I spent probably 40% of the interview talking about AI. And, one of the things that we talked about, obviously, was, AI is moving forward. There are issues. There are copyright issues because you can't copyright something not created by a human being, blah, blah, blah. Something that we learned here about 3 years ago. I was in very deep discussions with a company that had an AI comparative search engine for, you put in a reference and it gave you back music. Right. Suggestions. And the reason they were so enamored with Taxi working with them is because we've got screeners who are highly expert in certain genres, well trained by us to give great feedback to our members. And we've had people that have been like senior vice president of Sony ATV Music Publishing, or people who've been music supervisors, and the show just got canceled. So really, really good people. And they love the idea of Taxi being the front end interpreter of the industry's needs, because we're so good at that. For all the listings that we run, basically briefs for, dozens of libraries and supervisors, etc. And on the back end, after the search results come up, you still need to get human ears on it to make sure that the robot did its job well. It'll get it close, but it won't be perfect. We all know that from using ChatGPT. Really good to get seeds of ideas. I tried writing questions for this interview using it, and it was a joke. It doesn't have any of the human interaction or personal stuff that you and I are putting in here that hopefully is making this somewhat special. So I completely concur with you that while AI has its place, and in the future it may have even more value, it still needs a human interaction to really make it work well.
Absolutely. And fingers crossed that stays the same, Michael. But I do truly believe that it's, there's and again, not just one person's ears, right? Sometimes it's it not necessarily a village, but a couple of folks who can bring their own perspective to it.
Yeah.
When your composers are working, and do you give them feedback, or is it or is it a direct connection between the client and the composer?
When they join Taxi, we send them 3 briefs a day typically. Could range any kind of music you could imagine. It could be like, Dutch heavy metal, or it could be dramedy cues with an unusual instrument. Just the entire range of everything used in media primarily. And we still work with record labels that are looking for songs or for new artists. But I would say probably is for media. So we send them the briefs. They respond by sending music in for those specific briefs. Then on the day of the deadline, our screeners, who are not only genre specific, but like we have people that do country for Nashville and then screen country for film and TV, because it's 2 different animals. Both country, but country music for a movie can't have a storyline like a country song in Nashville would, because there's already a story on screen. So yeah, we give them feedback. We watch people improve. The smart, dedicated, hardworking members will absorb that feedback, and even though they get upset with us and they get frustrated, some drop out. Some probably have little voodoo dolls with push pins going through my eyeballs on them somewhere. The smart ones and the hardworking ones, who are able to get a grip on their emotions and develop a thicker skin, actually get better over time. And our screeners see it. They see them progressing. And sure enough, pretty soon they start getting more and more music forwarded to the companies by Taxi. And once they get forwarded and a relationship is forged between the company and the composer, then it's their relationship. We never commission anything. We don't make any money. We charge a flat annual fee of $300 a year. We charge $5 a submission so that people don't send every song they've ever written for every listing or every single request. And it's been working for 32 years, and I'm proud to say that my family has food on the table and a roof over our head because we've changed a lot of lives, and people who had the dream are now living the dream because of the collective work of my incredible staff and the screeners under this roof. So yeah, life is good.
Well, congratulations. We talk of you often, Lauren and I and Ralph discuss.
Really? Thank you. I didn't know that. Well, I mean, are you wondering like which prison I'm in, or?
No, we kept up on that.
Let's go back to talking about clients for a moment. We've got about 12 minutes left here.
Actually, I wanted to put something in. You mentioned something that's really important. Thicker skin, right?
Yes.
Where, you can't. as difficult as it is, and I just did a show, a 22-minute show, where I got back notes from a producer. One producer sent me back 6 notes. The other producer sent me back 131 notes.
Wow.
And you can't, and they were all fairly minor. Some of them were creative, were just differences in a creative concept between either me or the other producer, or just throwing out some stuff. And this guy was just super specific. You can't, sure, you can have that moment of sticking the pin in Michael Laskow's doll eye, but that's not going to literally buy you anything, right?
Right.
You have your thicker skin, you take it in, you listen, you do the job. So, sorry, I just want to sort of mention
okay.
that.
I didn't realize that was the end of the thought. But
look,
you're right.
Even by Thursday, it's like you can't take it personally. You really can't.
Right.
If you're going to take it personally, then go make a record and do your thing. And if you want to be in the production music business or the audio post business or video editing or anything else for that matter that involves things that go up the chain, you have to grow a thicker skin.
Why is it? What about you? And don't be modest. I want other people to really learn from this. What is it about you that has given you this extremely long, high-level career? Because like I started out saying in the beginning of this, there are members of ours who have become quite good and probably want to be you. Obviously, we've touched on all the points, delivering the quality work and the personality, being able to command a room if you're actually working with clients in the room, or if you're not, being able to earn their trust so they know that whatever deliverables you give them, they can count on you. They can walk into their meeting knowing that you made it so good that you make them look good. But in the end, I believe that your personality, I'm talking about you, Michael Ungar, and Roy Latham and Richie Becker and Ralph Kelsey, all the guys we know, all of you have a personality that people want to keep coming back to, like a good hair cutter. Am I crazy to think that as people try to enter that upper echelon of professionals that are working every day with major networks or major ad agencies, major whatever it is, that it comes down to all the quality of the work is assumed, but then it comes down to the personality. Am I nuts to think that personality is part of this?
No, would you rather work with someone who's difficult to work with, or would you rather work with somebody who gets it and has a sense of humor about it and can find the right path to get the project to where it needs to go? And part of that is again thicker skin, like water off a duck's back, the Roy Latham schedule. Part of it is, after a while, I've worked with some of these people for 20 years, not just my partners, but some of my clients who have started out as, APs or messengers for that matter, and now are VPs at Peacock. And some of that it works to your advantage, where some people don't want to be reminded that you knew them but many are those who you developed a relationship with, that they know that they can trust you, and they can also trust that you're going to go to the wall for them. Whether I'm getting paid a good piece of change or almost a freebie, it's my name on that piece that's going out, and so therefore it has to be, as in my opinion, as right as it can get, and don't have an ego about it, and deliver to the client. And from that, I have a pretty loyal following over the years. People come and go, but for the most part, I've been able to maintain my client base and Sandblast as a whole, because everybody is on a certain level, similar to where we were at Schwartz, where if Richie couldn't do it, then Joe could do it. Joe couldn't do it. I mean, everybody has their personality quirks. But you, like you said, you have that level of, you assume that level of professionalism. It helps to be likable and to know how to work a room. You've always been great at that. I learned from the best, Michael. That was you. So.
Thank you. That was, as the manager of that place, that was one of my jobs. I mean, I had very few of my own clients because Howie didn't want me competing with you guys or feeling like the guy that was kind of the overseer of flow at the place, if you will, was competing with the engineers because you guys needed to have a following to keep your incomes high. But I needed to be able to go in and great observation on your part, because I could be filling in for Roy for a week when he was on vacation, or filling in for you or Richie or whomever. So I had to know your interactions with your clients so that I could go in the room and not try to mimic you, but be a guy that your clients or Roy's or somebody's would feel comfortable with, because comfort is a lot of it as well. Because if they're not comfortable with the person, then they start to doubt your audio decisions. Anyway,
and even if they're not doubting it, it's just like, are you fun to work with, or are you not fun to work with? I mean, why you don't want to have this difficult relationship where, as a producer, you're walking on eggshells because you don't want to insult the guy who you're paying to do the work. It's just always remember that they're the client. You're the vendor. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah. I think it's really important to remember that that you are not important in this process. The end product is the most important thing that everybody needs to be working towards to get it to the point where it is as good as it can get. Now, that might take some twists and turns along the way, and somebody, 3 steps over where your producer is, who thought it was great, turns around and goes like, I don't really like jazz. I mean, you're going to run into that. But again, you don't take that personally, and you put your nose to the grindstone and you figure it out. And with the technologies that are available now, you have a much better chance of doing that. As well. But personality has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I just finally dipped my toe in the water in the digital domain about 3 years ago. Got a new laptop and I got it with Logic installed. I'm blown away. You remember Studio West at Howie Schwartz. I mean, that was a dreamy room, the SSL 6048. Actual real like LA2s, original ones, original Pultecs of my collection anybody would drool over. There's so much more in Logic that I keep trying to find like a week of vacation or something where I can just immerse myself in the room, because for me it's all about learning the topography of Logic and what it'll do, but it's got way more stuff than an SSL, that's for sure, and SSLs are pretty darn wonderful.
But nothing sounds like an MM1000. A BX20 is a BX20, Mike. That's all I can say.
Hey, by the way, I stumbled on some monitors that I should tell you about. I'll make this really quick because we've got like 2.5 minutes left. But I was watching a Clear Mountain thing, and he was using Yamaha MS. I can't remember the number. Ari, is it the model number on the back of that thing?
The NS10s?
No, I've had NS10s forever, but these were after MSP7s. Okay. They only made them for a year or two. They discontinued them. Clear Mountain said, these are my daily drivers. They're sitting on his SSL in his home studio. So I looked online and I happened to find a used pair from a really nice lady who's like the vocal coach in South Florida. She's also in the band Boston, like an actual member of the band. And she tours with Barry Gibb singing the Barbra Streisand stuff when he goes out and does that part of his, tour. So she ended up, I wanted to buy them from her. She said, tell you what, I want a year of Taxi. So I ended up giving her 2 years of Taxi membership. I got these monitors, all of my engineer friends that have sat down and listened to these things, you can find them online. They're a little hard, but you can find them used for about $500 to $1,000, depending on the mileage. They will blow your mind. The imaging is so incredible that I don't even bother turning on my NS10s anymore.
Yeah, no, please don't.
One last question before we buzz out of here, which is, I'm sure you've had many, many interns and assistants over many, many years. My observation as to if a college are on a professional level, do you find that people who got college educated to become composers or audio engineers or whatever, are they better, or people who came on board as an intern and learned under the roof with you?
Yeah, it's a tough question, really. I mean, so much of it is personality based. I think one of the things that, Lauren, my music partner, will tell you that college is a waste of time. He went to Annapolis for a year, got out of it. He was and 6 years later, he was the program director at, WQXR in New York, the largest classical music station in the world. If you have a library card, it's like if you have a library card and a brain, before internet time, if you're naturally curious, you can do it. But I think college does really help you learn about socialization, and I'm not really sure that's true anymore necessarily. Based on
now you learn how to protest.
But the mental health issues that have occurred over the years with social media and what that has done. But I feel like if you're saying does college teach you how to be an audio post engineer? It doesn't. You can take a course from one of my guys who works with us, Bill Lacey at Montclair State, who is a beta tester for Pro Tools and was top-notch Cedar digital restore, knows everything you need to know, and he'll say at the end of it, you've learned what you've learned the course curriculum. Now you have to figure out how to creatively apply it so that your client is happy with what you bring to the table. And is that something you learn in college, or is that something that you learn watching, being a studio rat? The opportunities of interning at a live studio now are few and far between, though, so it's really hard,
Yeah, that is a very sad fact, but I completely agree. And with that, I've got to bounce out to start our next thing. But man, this has been awesome. You were everything that I hoped that you would bring to our members watching this. I'm so sorry that the video crapped out on us, but I want to have you back again, man. This was not just great for me because it was Old Home Week, but you get it. You completely get it. And I wanted our members to hear from somebody who is working at a super high-end place with super high-end clients every day, because I know that so many of our members would love to be doing what you're doing. So thank you for helping me create competition for yourself.
Yeah, great. Luckily, I'm old enough to almost retire, except retired these days just means you're tired again. You're just retired. But
right.
I've got to trademark that. My pleasure talking to you. Again, your name comes up often, and we're so happy for you and what you've been able to accomplish. Fascinating. Paul, my brother, sends his best, and best to you and yours and your family. I hope everybody stays well and safe.
Thank you. And I promise you, first time I'm anywhere near you, I will come, and we should hang out for an evening and have our wives meet and all that good stuff. But this has just made me miss you all that much more. Thank you, Michael Ungar, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Big round of applause. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we hope to do this again.
All right. Be well, Michael. Thank you.
Bye-bye.